A friend recently asked me who I make these videos for. He said they have zero market value. And honestly, looking at how much I spent on film just to shoot some damp British bricks for a week, he's probably right. It's a terrible business model. So the whole thing started with Oasis-induced hysteria. This reunion wasn't optional. They were the soundtrack to my questionable teenage years. I had to go. So, after hours staring at a frozen Ticketmaster screen, I randomly clicked Edinburgh, and the universe said yes. So suddenly, I had a trip to plan. The idea was a week in Manchester, the Holy Land, followed by the gig in Scotland. Now, this video is for the people who, like me, travel with a digital camera just for safety, only to realize it's the one that will actually save your ass and give you the best shots, a compact film camera just for fun, which inevitably becomes the one you enjoy the most, and a medium format rangefinder, mostly just to give yourself that air of professional importance while you struggle to remember if you remove the lens cap. So let's be real, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it with 3 cameras. I told myself this would be a light trip, by my standards anyway, but my standards usually involve a bag that weighs as much as a lead newborn, and the delusional belief that carrying 3 cameras makes you a better photographer. It doesn't. Turns out, it just makes you a photographer with back pain. Anyway, I'm not complaining, so let's see how it went. So the first thing after checking into our hotel was the only reasonable priority: loading my cameras. While shooting the first frame on the Olympus Muse 2, I already had a feeling. And I was right. Anyway, time to leave our way too fancy hotel and start exploring. First stop, for obvious reasons, the Definitely Maybe bar. It's essentially a shrine to the Gallagher brothers, I guess. Anyway, we stayed just long enough to feel like it's 1994 again, and to realize there are people out there way more obsessed than us. We spent the rest of the afternoon getting lost in the northern quarter, between the murals, the red brick walls, and that constant feeling that every corner in Manchester has a story to tell. At this point, I switched to the Fuji GS645S. First shot, this is what came out. So now I'm wondering if the problem was the cameras or just me. Then evening came, and with it, the end of my photographic confidence. Low-light film without a tripod is not my jam. So I just shot some uninspired digital frames, but honestly, nothing worth writing home about. On day 2, we just wandered around Manchester a bit more, following whatever looked vaguely interesting. At some point, we walked past this mural, which felt a bit too poetic for how early it was, but I'll take it. Eventually, we ended up at Manchester Cathedral. I'm a sucker for Gothic cathedrals, so I couldn't not go in. I took a mix of digital and film shots, inside and outside, nothing groundbreaking, but decent. Shortly after, I stumbled upon this phone booth with a light that was impossible to ignore. Since I had 3 cameras on me, I did what any rational person would do. I shot it with all of them. Then we took some time to enjoy the Manchester Art Gallery. But the real spark happened on the way to Deansgate, when I came across this sign. It will probably be the title of my next project, a zine featuring the photos from this trip. I won't give too much away for now, but I think it fits perfectly. So stay tuned for that. Then we headed to the Science and Industry Museum. It's an incredible site, standing right where the world's first passenger railway station used to be. It's basically a tribute to Manchester's industrial soul. There was a lot of renovation going on, but we still managed to catch a glimpse of the old textile machinery and some other interesting bits. Not far from the museum, we got lost among red brick warehouses and old buildings that feel frozen in time. The real highlight was the Castlefield viaduct. It's an old railway viaduct converted into a sky park, and honestly, it was probably our favorite spot in the city. It's like an oasis of quiet, right in the middle of the urban chaos. I absolutely love the vibe in Castlefield. It's incredibly cinematic. At some point it felt like being on the set of Peaky Blinders. And it actually was, since they filmed several scenes for the show right there. But I do have one regret. The best shot of the day was digital only. I'm not sure if my ISO 100 film just couldn't handle the light or if I was just being lazy, but either way, it's so annoying I didn't get it on film. I was really feeling this frame. Symmetrical, geometric, perfect. But I forgot the golden rule of medium format. The first frame is a lie. It never existed. Once again, digital saved my ass from my own incompetence. So, I did what any professional would do to handle the uncertainty. I got an emotional support milkshake, because travel photography is 10% art and 90% bad dietary choices. Next stop, the factory. If you're not a music nerd, here's the deal. This place was the brainchild of Tony Wilson, the man behind Factory Records. Here's the reason we have Joy Division, New Order, and the whole Manchester scene. It's the ground zero of the music that changed Manchester forever. Not entirely sure why, but this is one of my favorite shots from the trip. The Fuji GS645S with Cinestill 800T is a combo I should trust more than I do. Starting the day with the classic me move, leaving the rewind knob sticking out the whole time. I guess my Fuji and I are still in the getting to know each other phase. Or maybe I just shouldn't be allowed to touch film cameras. Anyway, we took a walk through the northern quarter to pay our respects to the legendary bassist for the Smiths. Manchester really loves its music ghosts. We took a bus out to Salford to visit the Sulphur Lads Club. It's a legendary spot for the fans of the Smiths, basically a place of worship for people who enjoy being miserable. but in reality, it's still a working community center for local kids, which makes me feel even more like a weird tourist for being there just to see the Smiths room. Back in town, we ended up in Ancoats. It's one of my favorite spots, mostly because it has that perfect mix of industrial history and eerie abandoned vibes. And also because there wasn't a soul in sight. And in case it wasn't obvious by now, I have a massive fetish for brick walls. Leaving the quiet of Ancoats, I found the Ian Curtis mural. I know, everyone takes this photo, but doing it on Cinestill 800T gave it this strange, almost spiritual aura. Between the signature red halations and the birds flying over the building while he's looking up, it felt like a weirdly perfect moment, even for a basic shot. Back on the streets, we found some life philosophy on a wall that pretty much sums up everything at this point. Just a few more shots to capture the mood before ending the day under the red lights of Jimmy's. This place is seriously cool, and I wish I had used the Cinestill here, but I only brought the XT4 because I'm old and lazy and it was already way past my bedtime. The next day, we took the bus to Southern Cemetery. If you're wondering why someone would spend their morning in a graveyard, it's basically the cemetery gates from the Smiths song. It felt right to pay a visit to the people who built the Manchester scene. Consider it a musical history tour, just with a lot more headstones. Apparently, since we're unfortunately still alive, we needed some lunch, so we headed back to town. We ended up at the Manchester Museum, which was basically just a way to keep looking at dead things and old bones, but indoors. I didn't really take many photos here. We eventually found our way to the Epping Walk Bridge. If you're a Joy Division fan, you'd know exactly why. It was a spot from that iconic Kevin Cummins photo, Just a concrete bridge in the middle of a housing estate, but the atmosphere was still there. I had to take a few shots, even if I knew they'd never be as good as the original. Another iconic landmark where Oasis played their first gig and Joy Division used to rehearse. Well, time to leave. We went to the station for the train to Edinburgh. A quick change at Preston. Finally made it to Edinburgh for the main event, Oasis at Murrayfield. We started with a mandatory lunch of haggis, followed by a walk down the Royal Mile, and, you guessed it, another slice of cake. I'm basically running on sugar and caffeine at this point. I took a few more shots of the city before hopping on the bus to the stadium. I only brought the Olympus with me because larger cameras were banned at the show. Luckily, it's tiny enough to pass for a toy, so it was my only way to document the night on film. The energy was insane. Definitely worth the trip. We got back hoping for some sleep, but the universe had other plans. The smoke detector or whatever started beeping every 40 seconds, all night long. After barely sleeping and running on post-concert adrenaline that had officially worn off, we did a very low-energy final lap around Edinburgh before dragging ourselves to the station and heading back to Manchester. The journey back to Manchester was a struggle. No sleep, a delayed train, and no air conditioning in the middle of a heat wave. We basically collapsed in the hotel for a few hours and only resurfaced for some sad fast food and a McFlurry. Not the most glamorous ending, but it was all we could manage. On our last day, we took it slow. We ended up taking the bus across the city, which turned into a pretty good way to see Manchester one last time. We headed to the Whitworth for a Turner exhibition. It was actually really good. Then back on the bus. We spent our last few hours drifting through the gay village and taking one last look at the city before checking out. So turns out the little Olympus was the real surprise of this trip. My medium format Fuji takes great photos when it works, but this tiny camera never lets me down. I think it's a reminder that sometimes the best camera, it's just the one that you end up using the most. And speaking of tools, color grading of this video was made using Dehancer. It's a plugin that simulates analog film stocks. So if you shoot digital, but you want that film look without trying too hard, I think it's worth trying. And make sure to use my code NOWHERE10 for 10% off. Link in the description. So I still don't know if this video has any market value, but if you're still watching, I think we're on the same boat. We are the ones who find beauty in old bricks and overpriced nostalgia, even if it means carrying 3 cameras, just to realize once again that the digital shot was the best one. If you've ever carried multiple cameras just to end up struggling with which one to pick for the same shot, let me know in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one suffering from this specific disease. As I finish editing this, I'm just crossing my fingers that Liam and Noel don't decide to break up again before I hit the publish button. Anyway, go shoot something, even if it has no market value.